Right. Hello.
Hello.
Here we are. So I'm with today Esperanza Perkins, who's based down in Surrey and has a drawing and crochet practice. Would you say that was right? Have I described it in the right format?
That's right, yes. In my artwork, I use traditional crochet techniques alongside traditional drawing methods. So to explore memory and the various relationships within my family lineage. I was born in Spain, and my parents settled in London. So keeping a connection to my Spanish heritage is also important within my practice.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to explore that a little bit more, because you mentioned in your email that you used to sit with your grandmother and learn to crochet with your family.
That's right.
Yeah, so what form did that take? Was it sort of a casual thing that you would join in, or was it a taught thing that your grandparents wanted to pass on?
It was a casual thing. My Spanish grandmother, she would, when we used to visit at school holidays, the long 6 weeks we used to go for, was very long, and so she would sit me down and we would all sit together, and she would teach me how to crochet. And this was a very young age, and I literally was hooked. And it has since followed me all this time. So when I started doing my art practice later on, I thought I incorporate that side of my practice too.
And what age were you roughly when you started to do the crochet with your grandparents?
How old?
Yeah.
I was I don't know, 6, 7, something like that.
Okay.
I was quite young.
Yeah.
So as soon as I was able to hold a crochet hook, old enough to hold a crochet hook, then my grandmother used to teach me how to various little stitches and patterns, and so progress. And my mother used to also teach me how to sew and embroider and knit, and we would sit together. It was a way of communicating, bonding, passing down skills. And it's something I like to keep connection to as well. Those memories and recollections of those times with my family.
Yeah. And then, so during that time, as you were growing up and got into your teenage years and beyond, was crocheting something that you would do for yourself as a sort of relaxing technique, as a hobby, or as a creative thing? How did you view it at that stage?
At that stage, it was very much something I really enjoyed to do. It was meditative. I enjoyed the patterns, and I used to make projects that lasted sometimes 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Large crochet bedspreads and tablecloths. So that would take me a long time. So they were long projects, and I enjoyed the end result. Having an heirloom, so to speak.
Yeah.
That later translated when I started my course into more of a practice, an art practice, which I'll probably go into a bit more later.
Yeah, because I'm always really curious about what the transitions are when artists get to making the work that they want to make. You know, what led them to that process, and what they did in between, and how they sort of fused in the making of things in a month, perhaps. So, you know, traditionally lots of artists don't step into the role of being a full-time artist until they've had different levels of professional experience in other areas, and then they come back to it.
Yes.
Was that
yes, that's right.
For you, or was it?
It was very much like that. My goal was to do an MA and to progress my practice. And I remember on the first day of that course, I got asked, what's my guilty pleasure?
Yeah.
And you know what I'm going to say? I said it was crochet. I can't stop crocheting.
Yeah.
So, well, why don't you bring that into your practice? And suddenly a light bulb turned on, and that's when I started analysing why crochet was so important to me. And it was going back to my family, connection to Spanish heritage, connection with my grandmother, my mother, all sitting there, and it was for me a very important time to hold those memories.
And did your grandmother then, was she taught by her mother? Has it gone back a long generation in your family?
That's right, yeah. So she was taught by her grandmother, just passing down, down the skills, down the generations.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. So what year was it that you started your MA?
I started in 2011 and completed 2013.
Okay, and where did you study?
Wimbledon College of Art.
Right, brilliant. And was that under a fine art practice, or did you go through a textile route?
No, it was a fine art practice. I specifically chose a fine art practice because I wanted a more varied course, not to be specifically for textiles but at that time, having said that, at that time I didn't know I was going to go into crochet.
Okay.
I started the course creating sculpture.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it led on to, so the little idea was put in about using crochet in your practice, and you had the light bulb moment. How did that shift your practice at that stage then? What were you doing before that time?
Before that time, I was, as I said, making sculpture using clay, dry clay and paint.
Okay.
And that stemmed from a course I did previously. I did a ceramic course, so that sort of evolved into sculpture using clay. I realized very quickly I was never going to be a potter. So I put that to one side and decided to pursue my dream of doing an MA, so I could realize my practice I wanted to go in different directions, and I didn't know how I wanted it to go. So the MA enabled me to find myself.
Great. And did you do it part-time then over a couple of years?
I did it part-time, that's right. It was 2 years part-time. And yes, it enabled me to focus my ideas.
It's great. I found I had a similar experience in that I went and did an MA later on over 2 years, and it was such a rich experience being able to do it after accumulating various different experiences through life, and being able to really fine-tune, I think, a lot of what I'd had collectively. And I didn't really realize, but actually that period of time sort of pulled together lots of threads that had been circulating in my art practice, albeit I hadn't worked fully on my art previously.
Right.
It kind of knitted lots of things together in a really cohesive way, so that it made the foundation of what I was doing a lot stronger, I think, is what I would say. Yeah.
It's been similar for me too. I've been drawing and all this time drawing and making, but never fully having an art practice. Until I thought, when my son grew up and I thought it became more independent, I thought, well, I want to pursue this dream of mine and make my practice a bit more permanent.
Yeah. And so did you find that, you mentioned it being quite meditative before you, the actual the process of making?
Process, yes.
Yeah. How, because I'm asking this because I find that my painting now does that for me, and I realize that most making does that for me, but I hadn't really made that connection necessarily earlier on. I knew that I was drawn to doing things, and I had to create at some level, but I didn't really quite realize that it was a fundamental necessity
Right.
for me to do it in some ways. And it didn't necessarily matter too much what form it took. It just needed to be expressed in some way or other, because it was having such an impact on my beingness in the world, I guess, is how I sort of put those two things together.
Right. Okay. Yes.
If you was to expand on that a little bit more, what does it give you back when you are making a piece of work?
As I mentioned, a meditative element to it, as well as I feel a closeness to my family and my heritage, and more importantly, memories. As many of my closest family have now sadly passed away, I'm sort of keeping the memories and those recollections alive.
Yeah. I have to say that on viewing some of your work, there's a huge level of intimacy that comes through, I think, when you view your work, and they're so beautifully worked. You can almost have a sense of the time that's been spent in the making of it.
They are labor intensive, but I do enjoy that aspect. You can get so immersed in the process of making, so it's very difficult to say, well, how long did that piece take you? Well, to me, it's not very important the length of time. It's the process and for me. So yeah.
I'm kind of curious as well whether your forms are they an intuitive process that you start, or do you design what you'd like to do first and then follow that rhythm?
It can be a combination of the two. Sometimes I can pick up a crochet hook and just start crocheting without having any idea in my head what I'd like to make at the end of it. So I just crochet. Other times I have a clearer idea and base my designs on ones that I crocheted when I was a child, when my grandmother used to teach me, and they're loosely redesigned and reworked to make the piece I'm having in mind. So it can be a combination of the two. Or other times I sit drawing, doodling, and something will appear, hopefully. So yeah, it's a combination of all of those ideas.
And how have you found that since the MA, was that the first time you began really showing your pieces in the wider gallery world?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, I wasn't sure. I didn't have the confidence before to start showing my work, and hence I wasn't ready, I don't think, either. So it was the first time after doing the MA that I started showing my work in exhibitions.
And how was that for you? How did it feel?
That was great to have them out there, because working in your studio is a solitary occupation.
It is.
So to be able to have them out in the outside world was wonderful, to be able to talk to people about them, and the reaction that I got from them, which was very positive. And the feedback was very informative as well. Every time I show a piece of work in a different exhibition, I mean, the feedback I get is different again. So it's very educational in a way.
Do you work with one specific gallery at the moment, or do you show collectively in other areas as well?
I'm not with the gallery at the moment, so I show in various locations.
And is your studio in your home, or do you have an external studio somewhere else?
I have a studio in the house.
Yeah.
We had an extension built recently, which gave me the luxury to have a dedicated room to making, as before I had work everywhere around the house and it wasn't very practical.
Yeah. And has that shaped your work, being able to have it in one space?
Yes, definitely, to be able to see everything in one location and being able to just shut the door and then and be able to lose myself and in the process of making.
And how has your work developed, do you feel, since the early days of sort of from your early 20s onwards, from you just doing it as a creative relaxation technique or process to now exhibiting? Has it become more complex, or in what way has it evolved?
From when I did my BA, you mean?
Yeah.
It's evolved quite differently from when I was doing the BA. I started as a painter, and the paintings I made were very fabric-like. Looking back on them, they had loads of folds. They were very colourful, lots of folds, and very fabric-like. And then I moved on from there to sculpture, and then again the fabric elements came into those too. So there's always been some thread of connection going on along that. The fabric or threads were involved on reflection. I did dabble with textiles as well on the course, weaving. That involved threads, and my final show on the BA was sculpture, and I combined it with using actual fabrics with plaster.
Oh wow!
So there was always an element of material being used. And drawing also played an important part along that process.
Yeah, because I've seen some of your work fuses the drawing alongside the crochet.
Yes.
Yeah, which is just stunning. It looks so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a really nice fusion of almost using the thread as a pencil.
That's right. I see drawing with thread and drawing with pencil, so the two combined. And when a viewer looks at my work, I like them to think, well, is that a bit of a drawing, or is that the crochet part?
Yeah.
So yes, it's a process that is evolving all the time, and I haven't used colour as such yet. This is something I'm looking into. The reason I haven't used colour so far is because traditionally and historically, lace has always been white.
Yeah.
So I've kept it to its purest form.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking now that maybe I should use the background different colours and keep the crochet white. So I'm exploring using different drawing elements like white ink. So I'll see how that goes.
Yeah. And do you get to a stage where, I mean, it's that eternal question, isn't it? When is a piece finished, which you can talk about for a long period of time?
Yes, when is a piece finished? It's a good question. Sometimes I have to leave a piece of work till the following day because I don't know whether it's finished either at the time. I need to have some space between me and the work. It's a good question, and it does sometimes takes me a while to see if it is completed. Do you find the same thing? Or
yeah, I have to sort of walk away from them for a while and then come back in. And
yes.
And then I go, oh yeah, that's definitely not. I'll do some more on that, or sometimes sometimes I'll just get to a stage where that's it. I can't do anything else on it to shift it, and so I leave it where it is. Yeah. But often walking away, because it can become so immersive, can't it, that if you're working on several pieces at once.
Yes.
Which I quite like to do that. I like to have a few on the go at the same time. That it's you have to visually step away.
That's right. Yes.
And then step back in.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes it takes me overnight or a couple of days, or just put it away and look at it, and not look at it again for a few days, and then go back to it and say, well, how do I react to it now? And then I make my decision from there.
I wonder if you to approach your work or your practice from a particular methodology, or whether you are, you sort of, how do you set yourself a body of work to work on, and do you need to do anything specifically in terms of research or technique training, or do you just go straight in as a intuitive free-form exercise?
Generally I go straight in, but I underpin that with conversations, memories and recollections with family. For example, I looked after my father for many years until he passed away, and he loved wearing these really pattern jumpers.
Okay.
That was his signature clothing, his pattern jumpers. And I thought, a memory of him was these patterns. So I made a piece in memory of him. For these patterns. They're not exactly the same, but they're inspired by these patterns, and it's called My Father's Jumper. So these memories, I try to keep my memories alive in the work somehow, and that's an example of how a connection with my father.
How lovely. Isn't it interesting as well, how so much of it does spring from experiences in childhood, I think, that are often unconscious or subconscious, that it is only through doing the practice that those memories are brought into the conscious, and then we realize what the connection is.
It does take a while as well to think back and remember things as well. They say that memory is quite selective in a lot of cases. So it's interesting that that what I pick up in my work and discard as well.
And how the memories are very selective and also not always very tangible, so therefore then you sort of recreate a memory in the current time of what was once past.
That's right.
You're sort of remaking memories as you go along.
That's it, reconstructing the past almost.
And so that piece behind you that's very beautiful.
Thank you.
Was one of your early pieces, you were saying?
Yes, it was a piece that I made for the final show on the MA.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Family Bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And the crochet part of it is a design that I crocheted when I was a child with my grandmother. So it's a design that I reworked, and within the crochet are family photographs of my family.
Oh wow. Okay.
So the central one is my grandmother and my mother. They're sitting there sewing.
Yeah.
And the rows along represent myself with my grandmother, my mother, and my father.
Wow.
And they're all repeated.
Right. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have you been able to pass on the technique to your son?
My son was very interested when he was little, but not so much now.
Yeah.
He's grown up and he has other interests.
Yeah. Would he know what to do if he picked up a crochet needle? Would he be able to?
I'd encourage it, definitely. Yeah. But, I do what we call a crochet club on Saturday mornings, and family members join in, and I teach how to crochet.
Oh, brilliant. That's gorgeous. Yeah.
So that's very rewarding. Do
you find that family members come together to do it? Say mother and daughter would come to the workshop?
I've only got two at the moment, but my brother's wife and my sister-in-law's, now what would that be, her niece, they join in. It started with a few more, but due to other commitments, that wasn't possible for them to carry on. But yes, it's a nice way to get together and share skills.
So it's a very sort of communal activity to do in a practice. So although it's a solitary practice when you're working on your own, it stems from a collective being together.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
That's lovely. And so what are your future plans then for your art practice at the moment?
I mentioned we're going into colour.
Yeah.
Background wise anyway. So we'll see how that materializes.
Yeah.
And I go through various stages of wanting to go very small and wanting to go very big.
Mm-hmm.
I have ideas about having working on a large scale. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we were talking the other day to somebody else about the large scaling up of work, and whether that's determined by the studio space in which you are, or your sort of mindset of where, you know, how much you can perceive your work as being bigger in scale, and then what would that mean, you know, and how big would it get to, and how would it manifest if you created something enormous?
Well, that's right. There's the practicalities involved of going big. And you're right. In a certain state, you're very much dictated by the space you're in, the height of the ceiling, the width of the room. But we'll see how I manage to work in those conditions.
Have you done any work in your practice that's been site specific to a particular place where you've had to work within the confines of that area?
Not exactly. I've collaborated with another artist, and we did. It wasn't site specific. We made the work to go in the space, which is totally different to what I'm making now. It was a large netting, and she projected a film onto it.
Oh yeah, nice.
And it was all, and that was the theme behind the work, was looking at the fishing industry and looking at the crochet, crochet decorative and the fishing industry. So there's water video was projected on the netting. So that was an interesting project.
Mm.
But other SiteSpecific, I haven't done anything.
No, but I guess it's quite movable, because it's, although you may use it as a 2D form, it's soft and malleable, isn't it? So it could be worked up into a 3-dimensional form as well.
Yes, that's right. And interestingly, I had a conversation with one of my artist friends, and she said, "What about going 3D?" And it is an interesting concept, how I would do that.
Yeah. I was wondering, one of my questions on my list to start this was whether you'd overcome specific challenges to be able to continue creating in your life.
I suppose looking after family. I mentioned that I looked after my father for many years, as he was very unwell. Yeah, it's just family commitments, really.
It's a really interesting conundrum. I don't know what word to use. The balance between making and having an artist practice and being in family life, or having other responsibilities to do. So would you say that you're at the point in your life where you have the most time to work on the work that you're making?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last question.
Would you say that now you have the most time to work on your art practice than you did previously?
Yes, I do. Yes, I have more time now, but it's still weaved in with family, obviously, and other mundane life's activities that we have to do as well.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've got the balance right at the moment? Because I'm always curious about hearing other people's experiences of this.
I think so. I think it varies. Sometimes it's more up, more down, and sometimes more down. But yeah, and at other times I think, well, I haven't done anything today.
Yeah.
But there is the thinking going on, even though practically haven't made anything.
Yeah.
There's the processing of ideas and digesting what you've done, and then where you want to go with various projects.
Yeah.
So there's always some activity going on creatively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the mind is always ticking away with various different things, and part of it, isn't it? Part of it's research, isn't it? And being inspired by other artists and other people that gets woven in. So I think the notion of having studio time for the majority of your week is unrealistic anyway, because part of that is administrative, part of it is family, part of it is other work commitments, and actually just being able to show up and do a little bit of, even if it's being inspired by reading a book or something else, it still all feeds into the same thing in the end.
Yes.
Are there any other specific artists that you draw inspiration from?
Louise Bourgeois, her textile work.
Yeah.
One particular part that resonates with me that she says about her using the needle. That she mends, she with the needle. It's not a pin. She just repairs with that. And I'm thinking, well, my hook is almost recreating a bond. So I made that comparison to myself about that. And also Sheila Hicks, I like her textile work very much. And artists that that draw, also drawn to. Now, which ones come to mind? None of them are coming to mind at the moment.
Don't worry, that's fine. Don't worry at all. But I can see, I can see where you're going with the Louise Bourgeois. There's lots of, I mean, there's, I suppose, lots of similarities, really, in some ways, of the underpinnings of what she was working through in her work, and that was very based around familiar family relationships.
That's right.
And the memories of those experiences and those relationships.
Very much so.
Wow, that's great. So thank you. That's so much. It's been really interesting to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you too.
I was just thinking, because I was going to put in the description box down below when I post it online some places. So are you happy for me to share your website address and your Twitter address?
Yeah, sure. I need to sort out my website. Everybody complains that they can't link onto it.
Okay.
So you by all means, you can put the website address. I will be getting a new one.
Is there anywhere else people can find out about your work? Where can they find out how to view your work?
On Instagram, Twitter.
Okay, I'll put those in the links down below, and then
okay,
people can find out where are you exhibiting at the moment?
I'm not at the moment. I've got a piece that will be at the Southwest Academy.
Okay. Yeah.
But don't put that down, that's not happening just yet.
Okay.
But no, I'm not exhibiting at the moment.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's fine. I'll put your details in, and then people can find you on Instagram or Twitter. Okay,
lovely. Thank you.
And it's been lovely to speak with you today.
Same here. Same here. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you likewise.